Imagine you have two friends, one born with royal blood and another one is not. The royal daughter has more influence and accessibility to power, while the other daughter lacks those resources. If it was up to you, which one would you choose? Would you choose power or will you risk anything to acquire recognition? Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Women in Power in Egypt. My name is Kariandri Silvas Navarro and we are special guest Erika Navarro. Today's episode will be focused on women in power with an emphasis on royalty family versus non-elite status women. Although women in ancient Egypt had equal rights such as the facility to initiate divorce, owning properties, access to education, and get a job aside from domestic chores, these rights were often distributed unequally depending on social status and relationship to the men in control. But why do royal and elite women often have better opportunities of gaining access in comparison to commoner women? It is because royal and elite women are considerable men-spec access. Therefore, these women are trained and educated to develop knowledgeable skills in business management because if something were to happen to the king, this woman will be able to step in on his behalf. Therefore, these women are looking ahead to crownship in comparison to commoner women. This podcast will focus on comparing women's authority by looking into Michaelsman's IEMP, which stands for Ideological, Economic, Military, and Political Relationships and Social Power. Our three key main reasons discussed in this podcast are: number one, women born in the Egypt royal family; number two, women outside of the Egyptian royal family; and number three, women's role of power in the modern era. Our purpose is to identify these women's roles in ancient Egypt. Without further notice, please enjoy and stay comfortable. It is time to discuss women born in Egyptian royalty family. Women who were connected to the king's royal status had superior privileges like social recognition, respect, economical support, higher education. Additionally, they had a voice as they were mentors to the kings of the family. They were often called the menspec access, who were known to be educated, who could be sent to represent the king. Erica,
I noticed women in Egypt were generally having more freedom than other parts of the world during ancient times, right? I think these women were encouraged to keep upgrading skills set to make Egypt better.
yes, I agree with you, Erica. This connects to my next point. These females are often the king's mother, sister's daughter, and wife. These females are meant to support the king's role and they are often shown next to each other representing power. But buckle up because this is going to sound bizarre. In some cases, the king's sister can also be the king's wife, meaning that the siblings could get married and have children to keep the divine lineage. I would like to highlight the photo above of the Metropolitan Museum of Art at New York. In this image, we could see a male in the middle and two women on each side, one on the right and one on the left. Why is that? Well, this is a representation of Egyptian dominated male hierarchy, the man being the head of household or the leader, and the women are there to support him. Similarly, if you look closer to these women in the picture, their posture and hands on chest represent a desire to serve and support, while the man seems mostly relaxed and free. This ideology of a male dominant society is a distribution that is fixed. In order to receive power, you have to lose some. As stated by Michael Mann, power is the probability that one actor within a social relationship will be in position to carry out his own will, despite resistance. For B to gain power, A must lose some. Therefore, I believe the perspective these men had in Egypt. Therefore, I believe the perspective these men in Egypt thought instead of fighting, not letting women do certain things like other ancient centuries, they are joining and allowing women to educate themselves and instead use them as an access. Women are allowed to have equal rights like men, just with the condition that these women support the males in authority to make them better. Something like the saying, two heads stink better than one. This ties back to our main argument by stating that royal women have better chances of obtaining a level of power. They work closer to the men in power, and that is their best access to maintain their authority in Egypt.
Interesting. Women seem definitely in power. Although it is bizarre to hear that male kings marry their own sisters or daughters, according to what Dr. Kunis said and was being discussed in class, why would it make sense in terms of power and property to marry a sibling or cousin? I wonder if men were okay with these actions, used for the sake of the dynasty. Did it really seem normal to have relatives marrying each other?
Those are great questions, Erica. To answer your question, the main role in this case seems to acknowledge that Osiris, the god of fertility and afterlife, married his own sister. So, for many Egyptians being exposed to this example, it may have regenerated the idea that it was common and better for sisters and brothers to marry each other. Therefore, they believe if two royal status were to combine together, they would have better kinship and would keep the family bloodline going for more generations. To further prove this point, let's read what Oxford University's Press have to say about marriage in ancient Egypt. In the love song, the words brother and sister have the same significance as husband and wife. Not only was the brother permitted to marry his sister, but such marriage was customary. Several primitive people have been known to make exceptions for such inbreeding in the royal family. But in Egypt, brother sisters marriage was not limited to royalty or nobility. It was considered the most suitable type of marriage in all ranks of society, according to Weber, 1935, page 410.
Wow, that's mind blowing. I wasn't expecting that. So, that's how royal females date their status of power in order to protect the Egypt hierarchy and divine kinship? What about Hatshepsut? Wasn't she really powerful?
Yes, Hatshepsut is an example of royal woman in power. She was also the first female to rule after her husband's death. Her nephew was next in the king throne, but he was too young. Therefore, Hatshepsut became the new emperor of Egypt, who adopted a title as a man instead of a woman. This information was stated in our primary source from the Brooklyn Museum that explained by Judy Chicago. Having said this, during Hatshepsut's ruling time, she was portrayed as a male king, as she often used the male clothes to assume her responsibility or to obtain respect in her role as a leader. In here, we can see a photo of her status from the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. She's seated a statue of Hatshepsut New Kingdom. I wanted to show this gold city status of Hatshepsut that I found at the reference of the Met Museum, and now I will read its description. In this life seat status, Hatshepsut is shown wearing the Nemes headcloth and the Skemi skit. These are part of the ceremonial attire of the Egyptian king, which was traditionally a man's role. The kingly titles of the sides of thrones are feminized to read the perfect goddess, lady of the two lands, and bodily daughter of three. What attracts me to this image is the feminine features and aspect of her poses, which I found really interesting due to her male portrayal of her costume. For me, it seems she often tried to hide by utilizing the male attire as a shield to protect herself, maybe, but she is also not in denial about who she is.
It seems that Hatshepsut not only had to adapt to a male ruling behavior, but also embrace the traditional attire that represented a male pharaoh. I think she was really brave in overcoming all these challenges and change of appearance. I wonder whether she was allowed to wear the type of clothing she preferred, even though she was the king. Now, coming back to royalty supremacy versus women from the lower class, what roles, power did they have?
Exactly, Erica. Now we're going to be moving to women who were not born into the Egyptian royal family and didn't have the same power as someone like Hatshepsut did. Let's read a short statement on Barbara Watterson's analysis on women in ancient Egypt. She stated Egyptian women's main occupation were marriage, running a household, and bearing children. This proved my point. If females were not a part of the wheel of power, the main role or focus was to marry and produce as many children as possible, at the same time taking care of the household chores. These women were still allowed to work, educate their children, and produce goods. According to some insight into women respect in ancient Egypt stated, God's wife of Anom is another considerable position and title appearing since the middle of kingdom and given to women of different classes of the society. As we can see, non-elite women had minimal influences in politics and were most exposed to follow its given role in agricultural fields. However, in some cases, those women outside of the royal family could find their way into more positions of power, such as elite women or even priestesses. On the contrary, to Hatshepsut, Tasover of dynasties then had to battle in order to maintain her position because she was born royal. She was a servant in the palace of Pharaoh who later became the wife of Pharaoh Seti II and the mother of Pharaoh Meneptah. Due to her husband's death, she ruled while her son was growing up and after her son's death, but her role was often questioned about her background and identity, if she was royal or not. So this brings us back to thinking about our main argument that commoners women have it a little bit more difficult than women born in the royalty family. But this does not limit women's competitions for power. That being said, another example of this is God wife of Ammon. She was a priestess who was also a commoner and non-blood related to the king. Even though she didn't have royal blood, she gained power by assigning the king's fertility practice to embody childbirth. She then became pregnant and she became the wife of Anom. This wife often have many privileges. Two examples of privileges, two examples of priestess goddess are Hanan and Isis, who are specialized in nature and power. In order to achieve these roles, they have to come from an elite or special status that identify with wealth and economy and a good education. Therefore, it was really hard for women of the lower class to become pretties, to become even pretties, but it felt it was not impossible either if you find a way to study or maintain a high social status.
Then, what inspired commoners into working for the royal family?
Great question. Women had the aspiration of becoming goddesses, such as Hathors. Based on one of our primary sources, the Rosicrucian Egyptian Museum stated that Hathor was one of the 42 state goddesses of Egypt and one of the most popular and powerful. She was the goddess of many things: love, beauty, music, dancing, fertility, and pleasure. She was the protector of women through men also worshipped her. She had priests as well as priestesses in her temples. This connects to our second source by Daniel Bason from Stellenbosch University, who stated, Egyptian women not only experience religion, they live religion. In the ancient Egyptian context, there was no escaping religion. It must also be understood that the ancient Egyptians thought that the man was the set of creation and that seemed that the essence of creation was according to them. According to the Cosmology of Heliopolis of Goni 2008, a failure to conceive will be a placed directly upon the shoulder of the woman and could be grounds enough to divorce. Since Hathor was a goddess of sexuality and fertility, but also aspected of safeguarding and caretaking, women were naturally drawn to her, and she developed a large cult following. Not only were many of her followers females, but her priests were also females. Hathor might have been the most relatable of goddesses because of her dual nature. She is a caretaker and sexual being, but she can also become fierce and even bloodthirsty. So, what's your opinion on this, Erica?
This sounds like religion was a huge part of the methodology mindset of many of these priestesses, like Hathor, who come as a sense of hope for the majority of females in Egypt. It sounds like the family of these females are trying to make it to the kinghood as a lifetime business. Imagine growing up and studying for multiple years to finally be considered or accepted to work for the goddess. Well, now that I say this out loud, it does kind of connect to the modern world today as many students compete in order to land the best jobs or best schools. It is also similar because Egypt was a male dominated country, but women did rule in ancient Egypt.
Yes, I completely agree with you, Erica. And this leads perfectly into our final topic of today's episode: women's role of power in the modern era. Even in today's modern society, women are constantly being tested and are often perceived as overly emotional, according to what Dr. Kuhn said and what has been discussed in our class. In the United States, females are in a place where women often tend to not be trusted in political matters because male fear females will act in an emotional manner instead of thinking rationally during these important decisions. Furthermore, this points out Michael's men's IMP in understanding sociological relationships. Social manipulation has been present for generations in symbolizing what is right or what's wrong, in comparison to an ancient Egypt in male dominance. In a male dominance hierarchy has still not changed much in today's society, right? Can we talk about why haven't we had a female president in the United States? And even in the majority of our even if in the majority of our world, like for instance, Hillary Clinton in the United States was more criticized than President Donald Trump. But why? As we continue this thought, let me close with a reading from Larry Kuthan. Is the United States really ready for a woman's president? She states, in America, men are still afraid, and I don't think women are too comfortable with the idea of a female being in charge. Is Hillary Clinton or Condoleezza Rice men enough to be president of the United States? This political incorrect question cuts to the heart of why Americans have yet to elect a female president. I think these are really important points since many women resonate with what she's stating. To conclude this podcast on women in ancient Egypt, we explore women, whether royal elite status, commoners, and even modern contexts that had demonstrated a sense of skill where women participated in IEMP role in social power. From women born to help their dynasty to those who rank a better position and to others who are criticized for wanting to be president or get a role of leadership. This proved my point that women are still finding a voice to be heard. This is being helping male. This is actually being a comparison of helping male in authority or educating themselves or women educating themselves to the maximum to just have power in order to fight back. I think this is what they're trying to do. Therefore, women in elite status are often found to be the men's best access in Egypt and still today in modern times, because women who are trying to educate themselves are often find themselves competing within each other and with society and men in general. And I think this is like a really interesting topic, especially in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, and in today's modern society. What do you think? Are educated women better than women without education because of their elite status? Do you find any similarities in today's woman's role? If you can respond to these questions, please share this podcast with a friend. Thank you so much for listening to us, and we hope you have learned something new. We will be coming soon with more episodes on woman power in Egypt. Thank you so much. Stay tuned and God bless you.